Horror games have been a no-go for me for decades now, which is peculiar considering just how popular and successful they are doing these days. I played a lot of games in my first decade and a half, but by my late teens I've really fallen off playing anything, and oddly was very much into horror films. Don't get me wrong, this was the early 2000s and my taste veered from Saw and Final Destination to the questionable Jeepers Creepers. Eventually I found my way back into games, but interestingly not the horror genre. Let's face it, I'm an absolute coward. Jump scares, gore, being hunted, none appealed to me, and it really feels like I'm missing out. For context, the only Resident Evil game I've played was the Wii's on-rail shooter, Resident Evil The Dark Side Chronicles. Feels like a dereliction of duty to that entire series. I dabbled elsewhere, fired up Bloober Team's The Medium and got bored after an hour or so. Pretty sure I had a dodgy copy of a Silent Hill game on PS2 that was barely touched. Oh, I did really get into the original Alan Wake, but that feels like an anomaly. The Switch 2 launch changed everything, as now I knew the newer Resident Evil games would be coming and I would have to be ready. So that's where we come back to Bloober Team's Cronos, The New Dawn, a classic take on the survival horror genre, and a genuine surprise that it launched with the Switch 2 version. Yes, its reviews are pretty middling, mid-70s on Metacritic, but it seems like a decent entry point for me, so can I face my fears? I deliberately didn't look up anything prior to playing, which I usually do with a new genre, and it was such a nerve-shredding start, which is funny as this game brings you in so gently, no enemies for a while whilst you explore. Here's you poking around these badly lit places that are falling apart. Not a lot of horror happens while the game teaches you the mechanics, but there's a moment where a clock fell on the floor, of which I only heard the sound, and honestly a tiny bit of poop came out. I was so on edge, terrified of what may come, and that was enough. I've been very impressed with the in-game sounds. However, I'm not really playing this right, having started early on a Saturday morning in handheld mode, the bright light meaning I barely see anything in game, and as it loads, just the reflection of my stupid cube head. I can't really knock the game for that, so evening play it is. The character's slower pace with these powerful enemies known as orphans mean it's hard to take them down, particularly when they merge with others. I make it through the early encounters though. Where this game is really for me are the vibes, being set in 1980s Soviet Poland, exploring this desecrated world, something bad has happened and all the people are gone. The architecture is amazing, I just love wandering around through these dilapidated buildings and old hulking buses that scream USSR. I loved the miniseries Chernobyl, set in the lead up and aftermath of the nuclear disaster, and this game has those vibes. There's also a bit of old footage from this time that also suckered me in completely. The slow pace of movement and exploration really lets you get a feel for the environment, constantly scanning for items or enemies whilst allowing you to enjoy the view. The main character design, this huge, slow, plodding, powerful creature is so cool. Reminds me of Bioshock's Big Daddies. Actually, being the traveller and being told what to do by the computer overlord keeps the Bioshock feels going. Oh, and I got a big kick out of the title card drop, that was really well designed. A few hours in, has the game clicked? Kind of, though it's slow going. I'm fine with the save points as you go, but having semi-regular autosaves is what keeps me playing. Absolute lifesaver. I adore that the main weapon is a pistol. Always give me one. Halo, Control, Cyberpunk, particularly when it gets different weapon attachments as it does here. Initially, the shot power-up mechanic was difficult and off-putting, which is a shame as it's an absolute necessity. Though practice, use of the gyro controls, and a pretty generous auto-aim helps a lot to get those headshots. Also, thank fuck for the exploding canisters strewn everywhere. Got me out of a lot of tight spots as they all ganged up on me. It actually helped a lot when I heard the Dead Space comparisons, and there's a lot to that. I loved that original game. I'm a sucker for anything in space, though I feel that was a far more accessible series to play. Plenty of ammo and weapons, whilst having an actual useful melee attack compared to here. Still, knowing to play it that way helped in how I approached Cronos. However, there is so much for me to moan about here. It's a brutal game, constantly replaying the same area again and again as I struggled to take down the multitude of enemies. Most areas you can just run on by, but some will lock you in, and I was stuck for about 30 minutes in one area until I just about scraped by. With the limited ammo, it does feel like I have very few options, and when you do eventually finish a big fight, you worry about how little you have left. Do I reload the save and hope I can not only win again, but do it taking fewer shots? I pressed on, but it never feels good. In fact, this comes to my biggest complaint, the lack of difficulty settings. The amount of games I play that not only have them, but have one labelled beginner. I am new to this genre. It feels astounding that they stuck with the hard game they came up with. In Elden Ring, you can just grind to level up or go elsewhere to help you progress. Here, you are stuck. Beat it with what you have, load an older save, if you have one, or just start again. This is brutal, and although I'm about halfway through, I can see myself bouncing off it if it gets too much. Oh, and the upgrade stuff is pretty egregious as well. You find and use cores to upgrade health, inventory space and resource limit. Being a survival game, you must need more health, right? Nope. It's inventory space as you can only carry so much, getting every single item possible as you go. Sure, it's obvious for veterans of the genre, but I had no idea. It's basically a run ender if you fuck it up. I had heard that just playing a game would help me get used to the genre, but in reality what desensitized me was replaying those levels again and again. It worked. In fact, it was a relief to run into a new area, get the jump scare, die quick, and then go back in feeling like I had this. I didn't, of course. Any area with you locked in with orphans that quickly take you down can become an absolute slog. But the world is so damn cool, I love the vibes, so it's been worth it just for that. It's also nice to know that bad learned behaviour from other genres really pays off here. My obsessive search everywhere and hoard everything in RPGs is the only way to get through this game. I feel vindicated. The worry it's going to make me even more obsessed now. I still need to beat the game. Whether I can or not now is more down to patience than fear. If you're a fan of the genre, it's probably worth a look. For me, Cronos has done its job, and I feel ready for Resident Evil 7's port. Though, the first person mode still scares me.